just wanted to start off with a little exercise. I'd like you to think of the most hideous person you know, okay? Like this is the person, like I mean really bad, the person that if you had to choose between an hour with this person or a terrible car crash, you would go for the car crash, all right? So have that person in mind. Hopefully they're not with you in the room right now. Is it him? And one thing I will say, I'm gonna make a crazy guess here. I'm gonna think that horrible person, this miserable excuse for a human being you're thinking of right now, is married. There's someone for all of us. What a relief. And the role of recruiters hasn't changed. We're still trying to find the people that are the right fit, whatever the culture of the organization may be. But the way in which we need to do that is changing very quickly. And let me show you why. Not sure how many of you may have seen this video. It was a clip, obviously it's not a video because videos move, but this is a still of a video where a girl flamboyantly at 4:30 in the morning videos herself dancing around her place of work and then subtitled with a whole bunch of reasons why this place sucks and why she's going to leave. It was quite fun. 18 million views this video received. Huge, huge press. Great negative employer branding. And if you happen to be bored one day, just Google quit videos, which is a whole genre in its own right now. There are literally tens of thousands of these videos with people very publicly. This one on the top left is one of my favorites. This guy takes a marching band into a Marriott and proclaims why this place sucks so badly and why all the management should be crucified. These two people in the middle, actually, they live finished their news announcement by quitting because this is a ridiculous TV channel. Okay? This is the new cool thing to do. Okay? And this has huge implications for everything we're doing here. So let's look at the bigger picture of why some of this is happening. For a lot of companies, and a lot of us do work in large organizations, the world really has changed quite dramatically in the last, say, 10 years or so. Let's just think about, this is a US stat. I tried to find similar sort of data from the FTSE, but I couldn't. But if you think about just any chart of the big companies over time, going back 20, 30, 40, 50 years, the stability of those companies, they remained in these sorts of lists of the biggest, strongest companies for a long time. In the 2000s now, we're looking at something like a very minuscule percentage. The volatility of what it's like for a company to try to survive and hold itself together has changed and become much more intense. These are comments from CEOs from IBM's global survey. There are very real conversations that are going on in large companies about whether or not they could even survive. Can a large company be nimble and relevant enough to actually keep operating the same way it used to? At the same time, one of the key assets of a company, their brands, the things that they actually could leverage their strength, their might because of their size about, has totally changed as well. Who's been shopping lately? Who hates being asked to put their hands up by a presenter? If you have been shopping lately, you may have noticed that the number of brands in a store has tripled in the last 10 years in the UK. So those hallmark brands, those big reliable names that people used to go to, that's no longer the case. There's many more of those options that people have, and they just cycle amongst them based on price sensitivity at any particular point in time. So the power has really shifted. How's this for a visual, eh? You want to see that again? Look. The power has shifted. You want to see it again? Okay. The power has shifted from the brand to the consumer. All those things that used to be tools that marketers could play with, like packaging and pricing and actually the quality of the product and the reviews, all those things someone can find when you carry the power to look at that stuff in your pockets right now, right? It's in your pants every day. You can go work out those things. There's nowhere for marketers to hide when they're trying to package up these experiences for people. And that is exactly what's happened. If you replace consumer with talent, that's exactly what's happened for the visibility of the reality of what's inside the company to talent. Another disappointing thing about this trend is that marketing actually kind of sucks. So that same IBM survey and many of these same sorts of surveys into CEOs' viewpoints consistently say that marketing is one of the most crucially important elements for a business. At the same time, CEO's confidence in marketing to execute on that is at an all-time low. It's starting to reverse a little bit now. Don't feel too smug, because that's the exact same viewpoint of what people have of HR. HR and marketing, the two functions where there's this biggest gap between perceived requirement and perceived expectations of what the company is actually capable of. So let's look at some of the big trends that have created this. It's not really big data. I just want to say big data because it's a cool term to use. But it's basically technology, right? So it's a combination of marketing and IT. I haven't trademarked this term. Feel free to use it. But basically, people's brand experience is now inseparable from our technological experience. You may recall late last year, they introduced Obamacare in the US, and it was an absolute schmozzle, right? The website basically didn't work. For weeks and weeks on end, the one place people could go to online to set up their accounts, to search for options, and to actually get moving on registering themselves just didn't work. What Obama said was, the product is fine, we've got a great, great product here, we're just having some problems with the website. That's totally wrong. There is no difference. The website is someone's experience. 5 years ago, you could get away saying that's just our website. Today, that is people's perception and understanding and entire experience with your brand. One thing that has helped save marketers in the last few years, in particular, is that technology has enabled a much tighter alignment between marketers' intentions and actually measuring results. It's enabled marketing to speak in the currency of finance and actually talk about leads and ROI. But consistently what we're seeing now is that marketing and HR are very similar. Marketing has the same function and focus around customer acquisition and retention that HR has around talent acquisition and retention. Very, very similar functions, just different objectives. Social media. So I won't say too much about this other than the fact that companies now, like industrial companies, Maersk shipping company, GE, have hundreds of thousands of people, followers online, on Facebook, on Twitter, on social channels. So companies that never ever had to think about anything other than advertising now have to really think about themselves as a publisher. At the same time, the channels through which they do that have dramatically changed. So before, the power used to be with the brands, and we used to think in terms of markets. Okay, we're going to go after the middle-aged pregnant woman market. Now consumers have the power, and the technology enables us to expect to be treated as individuals. I'm not a pregnant woman. I am Elizabeth, living in this place. I'm this age. I have diabetes. Okay? The expectations around how we're going to be addressed and the understanding people have of us has totally changed. The way people used to think about marketing was mass media. And now it's everything else. It's all of these channels. It's all of these platforms. It's all of these advocacy and employees speaking out on our behalf. And the frequency with which people need to hear those messages is also dramatically changing. Every year it becomes harder and harder. You need to repeat messages more frequently for people to have any recall of it at all. So we all need to adopt this publishing mindset if we're going to have an ability to shape people's opinions of our organization. So I'm going to share 4, I guess, big pictures around what we need to do to address this. Some of you may be aware with this. There's a whole bunch of different models for this process, but it's basically the buyer's funnel, the acquisition funnel, whatever you want to call it. It's the way you try to describe a journey of someone takes as they're looking to buy something. How do they become aware of it? How do they consider it? Do they actually buy it? And so forth. So it's a typical marketing model. And you can apply the exact same thinking to recruiting. Okay? How does someone become aware of an opportunity or an organization and get pulled through the funnel? Traditional thinking's focused very heavily on this, trying to get as many people at the top of the funnel as possible. Okay? What we see now, and those of you who are recruiting, is if you get technology enabled, you can get any number of people through this top of the funnel. Okay? You can broadcast a message as widely as you want. We mentioned candidate experience awards before. The pain that candidates have as a part of this process is immense, and the damage that is inflicting on organizations is equally high. The key to working this out is to leverage the bottom of the funnel. It's what marketers are doing increasingly with their existing clients, and it's what HR and recruitment need to do with their existing employees. It's use the bottom of the funnel, use the people who already have an experience of the organisation to convince and excite and attract similar people in the top of the funnel. Terms like B2C, which is business to consumer, business to business, P2P, all these buzzwords in marketing, the thought of product, brand, company brand, employer brand, personal brand, they're all aligning more than ever. There's total overlap and very blurry lines between all of these concepts, which just 5 years ago were very specific things. One of the hardest things for organisations to get to grips with, on the second point, is whenever we get an opportunity to speak, we don't want to miss it, so we have to tell you how awesome we are. Okay? This is the exact opposite of communication in the social media age. It's not about you. People don't want to be told how awesome you are to work for. They want to hear from your employees the reality of what it's like to work in that organisation. You're not trying to promote, you're trying to educate people. You're trying to facilitate people's journey to understand what the reality is like within this organisation. Embracing expertise. Here's another really telling chart. This is something from the Edelman Trust Survey, which is a very credible survey that's run annually. Snapshot is people trust less and less people in official positions, whether that's government, whether it's business. The credibility of a CEO as a spokesperson for a company is not what it was 3 or 4 years ago. We don't trust people at the top of the pyramid because we think that that's a controlled message. We think PR's involved. We think it's a veneer that's been put to stop us from finding out the reality of what's behind the curtain. The people we trust are people just like us, regular employees. Okay? It's getting their stories out that is the key to attracting talent into an organisation and having the reality attract like into the company. It used to be journalists and academics who had the greatest credibility. Now it is employees. So the key is to make your employees heroes such that they want to share their experiences and are empowered and feel they're not going to get in trouble for sharing the reality of what it's like behind the curtain. And the last point I'll make here, and it's a big one, is about the tone with which this is expressed. People transact with companies, but people really want to buy from people. They want to feel a connection. We are individuals, we're people, we want to have an emotional plug-in here that it makes something feel legitimate. In the absence of someone to buy from, we actually take recommendations from a complete stranger. Think about this when you look at a hotel. You will much rather look at the anonymous review that someone said, oh, this is a great place, or they got shitty bathrooms, than you would actually believe the hotel telling you themselves. Okay. This transparency is what enables people to come in. And it's very difficult because we've spent decades as companies building up entire departments to make sure the truth doesn't get out, to control messages, right? We have to unlearn all of that and get out of our own way to let the reality shine through. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this. A couple of years ago, Walmart had a scandal. They'd spent $24 million bribing people in power in Mexico to enable their what was a highly successful, they won pretty awards, businesses, okay? So in addition to the $4.5 billion fine they're looking at getting from the SEC, their market capitalization dropped $12 billion that day, the day that this news came out. Much higher than anyone would have predicted, because it's the antithesis of Walmart's external perception. The message they control about being a legitimate, all of their PR machine, and they're one of the biggest investors in PR, all of that messaging is around being a legitimate, warm, friendly organisation who does the right thing. Once the reality gets shined through, they get absolutely castigated, even though it was 2 years or 10 years or 20 years ago. It can happen like this. Another thing about this being real thing is that people can't emotionally connect with a company that thinks it's perfect. You cannot pretend that everything is great behind here because you cannot, think about your friends. You don't have friends who pretend that they're great and they're awesome all the time. You can't connect with that. You have to see flaws. And so this concept of flawsome is a really big one in marketing right now. It's how do you get rid of the controlled message and actually let a real story come out. And that will have some negatives and some positives, but reinforces the truth element that people are seeking. You see this behind the scene things happen a lot. Like, Obama's great at this. He puts, like lights and things in the background when he's speaking, so it looks like, oh, I didn't realize you guys were coming in here to film me today. I'll just quickly get over here and talk to you. Real people on the street. You've seen, there's a serious web camera that was on. I'm not sure how big a thing that was here or not, but it's this behind the scenes. It's these little insights to try to convince you that it's not a controlled thing. Okay, it can be his message. And obviously, this is the most scripted piece of content that is ever produced. But the veneer, the reality that the triggers they're trying to give you are to indicate that this is real from the heart, happening right now. You're not being duped. Similarly, organizations who are looking at doing, if you're doing graduate programs, for example, I don't want to hear the shiny corporate videos of people smiling and globe spinning. I want to hear from people who are in that same position, who've been through that process. What is the reality? I don't want all the shiny stuff. I want to know, am I going to be working till midnight? But it's worth it. So don't hide away from the realities of what it's like to work in an organization. Find the people within the organization who can carry those true stories to the outside. And the last point I'll leave you with is this. This is a friend of mine who just posted on his Facebook a couple of weeks ago, and I just thought it was a really interesting quote. Someone just asked me why I use Snapfish over Shutterfly. They're both photo printing services online. I told them because Shutterfly never called me back after 3 interviews years ago. Why would you take someone through 3 interviews and never follow up, even if only to let them know they didn't get the job? On the back of this comment, now this is a guy who's not anything to do with our world. He's not in recruiting. He's just a corporate guy. On the back of this, everyone piled in with comments about, I will never buy from this company because of what they did to me 20 years ago when I was looking for a job. Okay? There is nowhere to hide with this stuff anymore. The reality will find you. Okay? And it's our role, both as marketers and recruiters, ultimately what we're trying to do is create great companies. That's our objective. It's a great time to be in what we're doing. Thank you very much.